Hey guys, this video is sponsored by ExpressVPN, so make sure to stick around at the end of the video to find out how you can get 3 months for free on your next order. Well, it's been a dog's age since I last took a look at a good old-fashioned Half-Life mod, and as the years go by, it's starting to become increasingly obvious that no one's going to make H Half-Life anytime soon. In the meantime though, something like mod will have to suffice.
Something died down here.
Yeah, thankfully though, mod is pretty damn good. And just like mod for Half-Life 2, what this thing does is expand upon an already really solid formula. Improving visual and audio effects, tweaking level design, enemy AI, weapon behavior, and most importantly, keeping all of these changes optional.
Ah, Freeman. I see you are in this mess too.
Now, there's no argument that Half-Life is one of the most important first-person shooters of all time, and there's two types of people in the world, right? Those who agree with that statement, and then those who are wrong.
I don't know how you can say that.
Because love it or hate it, the fact of the matter is that it helped to popularize that narrative-driven FPS for years to come, helping to pioneer environmental storytelling and immersive gameplay. And although it is a bit rough around the edges in its old age, I mean, aren't we all? You can still appreciate it for what it is, back from a time when Valve were still just warming up. Countless other games also owe their existence to Half-Life as well, and without Half-Life there'd be no Counter-Strike, or now Counter-Strike 2. There wouldn't have been a Team Fortress Classic, and as a result of that, there probably wouldn't be Team Fortress 2.
Not a crazed gunman, Dad, I'm an assassin.
So now with the release of mod, there's another reason to go back and appreciate it all over again. And it's even got support for Uplink and Darkstar. Developed by Gunship Mark II, mod was originally released way back in 2012, but it's only now in 2023 that version 2 has seen the light of day. Installing the mod is as easy as just downloading it on Steam, which takes a grand total of 20 seconds, then you're right in without any fussing around whatsoever.
What is that smell?
Right off the bat, the first and best thing I notice is that you've got a chapter select on the main menu, meaning you can skip right over that boring ass prologue that we've all played through 100 times now.
Gordon doesn't need to hear all this. He's a highly trained professional.
Still don't know why Valve hasn't added this feature to the original game, and the fact that Half-Life Source has it just kind of feels like they're laughing in our faces at that point. No! Anyway, once you get into the game, if you ever look down at your own feet, you'll also see your torso and legs, something which is a minor but welcome inclusion, and truly something that more first-person games should include so you don't just feel like a floating set of arms. You'll also notice that the Barney security guards look, well, different.
Main thing is, the military aborted the launch.
Yeah, that's a haircut you can set your watch to.
Now, Johnny Unitas, there's a haircut you could set your watch to.
Sadly though, there's no fully modeled cervix for Gordon or any of the other Black Mesa employees, but maybe they're working on that in a future update.
Dr. Freeman, I presume.
But it's after Gordon causes that old resonance cascade when the mod truly starts to shine. And what I like the most about mod in that regard is that it doesn't try to reinvent the wheel. It's just got all these small changes to how weapons look, move, and feel, so it keeps it in line with the tone of the original. But then it just gives it that bit of modernization to drag it out of the 90s. Even just moving around and aiming feels smoother and more fluid, and animations across the board are also improved. Yeah, it's kind of like they're being Black Mesa-fied. Playing through these early chapters in the campaign, you start to notice how they've added in more enemies, mostly in spots where there were no enemies to begin with. Like during unforeseen consequences, when you're navigating through the sewers and jumping over those crates suspended over a bottomless pit, you've now got to contend with Vortigaunts spawning in as well. And I swear to God, this mod puts a head crab around every second corner, because there's just way more of these assholes now than I remember there being.
Surprise, motherfucker.
Headcrab zombies that have taken over the security guards and have body armor now have more health points, which kind of makes sense if you think about it. And then there's also entirely new sequences, like during Questionable Ethics, there's a bit where a cheeky Vortigaunt traps you in a test chamber and sets off the machine, forcing you to hide in one of those enclosures. At one point too, a random Marine just happened to retreat into that room and he was running away from me, and he set off the event, which was pretty funny to witness, and shows off just how random the AI can be in this mod at times.
Ow!
And then later on in Forget About Freeman, there's a whole new combat sequence in an area which was formerly just inhabited with a bunch of assassins. Now it's like a full-on battle royale with head crab zombies, marines, and aliens. Yeah, it's like one big gory gangbang and everyone's invited. I feel like a lot of mods for FPS games have like a tendency to overhaul every mechanic and completely change how the whole thing feels in tone and balancing. I mean, go play through Cinematic Mod for Half-Life 2, for instance, or even something more ludicrous like S-Mod. And look, if a grown man can't kill things in a video game by shooting toilets at them, then maybe life's just not worth living. M-Mod, on the other hand, just feels like it's improving what's already there. You can see that the best when you get into combat with the Marines, in the way that all the explosions and the gore from the kills just seems to be much more visceral and graphic, but not in like a brutal Half-Life kind of way where intestines and bodily fluids decorate every surface. What's probably the biggest change is the option to turn on bullet projectiles as opposed to hit scanning. Now this is actually a pretty huge deal because one of the things which I think ages the combat the most in the original, and truthfully the combat in a lot of other older shooters, is the hit scanning enemies. Now, hit scanning basically means that if your crosshair is on something and you press the shoot button, well, you'll hit it instantly, and that's the case for 99% of weapons like pistols, shotguns, and assault rifles. You'd see this the most in the original Half-Life when you got into shootouts with the Marines, where you could do little more than just trade shots with them back and forth. It also meant that playing on hard mode wasn't really all that much about skill, and more about just knowing where they came from and attacking preemptively. It's hands down one of the crappiest aspects to Half-Life's combat, and something which ain't really getting any better with age. So the simple feature of turning all these bullets into projectiles pretty much alleviates that problem entirely. What it means now is that strafing around during combat actually has a purpose, as there's going to be a slight delay between when an enemy shoots at you and when that bullet's going to hit its target. You ever wonder why so many recent FPS games use projectile attacks as opposed to hit scanning? Well, because avoiding projectiles takes actual skill, whereas avoiding hit scanning just means putting a solid object between you and your opponent. And that's why games like Ultra Kill and Doom Eternal take way more skill to master than Call of Duty Vanguard. One of my favourite things to do in Half-Life whenever I got bored was to mess around with the time scaling options to more or less kind of make my own bullet time mechanic. And doing this now actually has a purpose, letting you see individual bullets fly past you in real time and also letting you appreciate all those improved particle effects.
Dear God, it's beautiful.
Now, it is obviously a double-edged sword, and you've got to be mindful of bullet velocity too, but it's just a simple addition to a combat system which otherwise feels more and more like something from 1998 with each passing day. So I guess my point is, if you're going to try out this mod and only use one feature, well, make sure it's this, bitch. And when it comes to the weapons, it doesn't take too long to see all the new features they've added in. Starting off with Gordon's crowbar, which now comes with a heavy alternate attack. This makes dealing with head crabs and head crab zombies far easier than having to whack them a dozen times. And it's also handy against Gordon's most deadly enemies, crates. The pistol can now be fired much faster than the original, which actually kind of makes it useful outside of just shooting head crabs or barnacles. And funnily enough, the alternate fire mode is what makes the weapon fire slower and more accurately. Other than that, the addition of a silencer is a nice touch too. This is also something they've applied to the MP5, so aside from having a slightly better looking model and smoother animations, you can again attach a silencer, which seems to do absolutely nothing, apart from just dampen the sound and make you look about 50% more cooler. Because let's be honest, it is a scientific fact that shooting silenced weapons is much cooler than shooting unsilenced ones. As for the revolver, well, this thing's gotten the firing rate update as well and comes with the laser sight attachment as an alternate fire, which lets you zoom in for more accurate shots, and that's something that was previously limited to the deathmatch mode. Plus, the laser attachment also slows down the firing rate and makes it more akin to the Desert Eagle in opposing force. Now, what seems to have had the least work done to it is the shotgun, and outside of having a unique crosshair, it more or less behaves the same way it always has. This to me is a bit of a shame because I've always thought the shotgun in the original was one of the crappiest weapons in Gordon's arsenal, and as far as FPS shotguns go, that thing's about as imposing as a duck's fart. It wasn't even that good for the time either. I mean, compared to the shotgun in Turok 2, for instance, or even Blood 2's shotgun was better.
That's right! Who's laughing now?
Just never really had like a great sense of power to it, and the really slow reload time, where Gordon just casually loads in shells like he's under no duress whatsoever, makes the whole thing even more pathetic. Pathetic!
Failure of this magnitude is extremely improbable.
Overall with the shotgun, I see no changes. Wake up in the morning and I ask myself, is life worth living? Should I blast myself?
Shut up!
Another odd change is that for some reason, the mod maker thought that the crossbow needed more drop-off than the original had, which means that this thing dips faster than a baby boomer coming off a Viagra high. And this is probably one of the few changes that, I just don't quite understand. I mean, the original weapon was pretty balanced to begin with, so giving the bolts this insane amount of drop-off just seems like a handicap. Just kind of feels like a change made for the sake of making a change. Grenades in the satchel charge, though, still serve their purpose in causing grievous bodily harm to whatever happens to be standing near them. And as far as I can tell, all that's really changed here is that the explosion effect has been updated to look even more impressive, which it is. Same thing goes for the MP5's Alternate Fire, which has that great way of just turning enemies into chunky looking soup. Later in the campaign you come across the RPG, which once again serves its purpose in destroying pretty much whatever's on the other end of it.
Rocket launcher!
And what I like about the version in MMod is how that little screen on the side of it actually turns on and off, depending on whether or not you're using that laser targeting mode. The tower cannon makes its return again in unforeseen consequences and is great at doing either the small or heavy lifting, destroying standard enemies, but also being really handy at taking down the heavy hitters like combat choppers thanks to that overpowered alternate fire mode. They've also added in a new handle on the side of the weapon for added comfort and has a really cool idle animation now as well. As for the glue-on gun, well, this thing more or less again performs the way it always has, just with a new alternate fire mode which fires off a charged up shot. As an alternative to the steady stream from the primary fire, which still looks like the proton pack from Ghostbusters.
Shooting, Tex.
Still though, it is a really fun weapon to use, even if it is one of the last ones you come across. As for the snarks and the trip mines, well, there's not much to say there. I mean, they're still both about as boring as they've always been. And unless the snarks get modded in to give Gordon a hand job, or a claw job I suppose, I doubt I'll really use these anytime soon. They've even somehow managed to make the hive hand useful now. I mean, that primary fire mode is still about as effective as shooting someone with dick warts, but now it has another fire mode which launches all 8 Hornets at once, which does splash damage and hones in on a single enemy. And it's actually kind of effective as an option if you don't want to waste ammo. Finally, just before you head to Zen, you get the Displacer Cannon from Opposing Force, which more or less now behaves like a goddamn BFG. But you know what? I just can't find anything to fault there, outside of it maybe being gate-kept until the end of the game. All I'll say there is thank God for console commands. But yeah, one thing I forgot to mention too is how when you pick up a weapon for the first time, comes with like a new unique animation of Gordon getting a stiffy for a few seconds as he admires it. And look, I get it. I mean, if you can't take a few seconds to admire the craftsmanship of an MP5 in the midst of a world-ending disaster, well then, life just ain't worth living. And yeah, plus I didn't mention the best feature of all. The whole thing is free.
What is that smell?
Quite a robust amount of modifiers to play with as Half-Life 2's mod was, but the changes it makes are small and yet still pretty big at the same time, so it is easier to see here where all the hard work is gone. Overall, there's very little to fault here with the modifications this thing makes, and I'd even say it's to the point where if someone wanted to play through Half-Life for their first time experience and wanted to use this mod, it's really probably not the worst way to do it. I mean, yeah, look, obviously you should play the original first, but if you just can't deal with the fact that this thing is 15 odd years old now, well, mod might help to alleviate some of that. Half-Life fans have had it pretty good lately with mod and the recently released ray tracing add-on, so now's the perfect time to go back and replay through it. Or if you're new to the series, load this thing up, play it for the first time, and see what all the fuss is about. Valve have proven that they know how to count to 2 with the Left 4 Dead 2 and yeah, the recent news about Counter-Strike 2. But I still don't think they're going to be making Half-Life 3 anytime soon, so you might as well get in on the ground floor while you still can. And with their mod, well, you could sure do it a hell of a lot worse. Yeah, that's right, it's that part of the video where I have to thank my sponsor, ExpressVPN. What's a VPN? Well, I'm so glad you asked. VPN is short for a virtual private network, and without using one of these, you're putting all of your personal information at risk there, your emails, your passwords, and your internet search history. Using a VPN though, all of your network data gets rerouted through a secure encrypted server, which means other people can't get access to it. ExpressVPN routes this information through over 3,000 servers, with you also being able to choose from servers in over 94 countries, and you get good speeds across the board too. The best thing to use this for, without a doubt, I think, is streaming sites like Netflix. Changing my location to another country though, like the UK for instance, I could then watch a whole heap of different TV shows and movies that would probably never see the light of day in Australia. I'd never promote something I don't use myself, but even then, if you don't want to take my word for it, you don't have to look all that far to see people saying good things about it. It's got great reviews on tech sites, but more importantly, it's got great user reviews. All you gotta do is click that connect button, and that's pretty much all there is to it. And on the off chance that something goes wrong, which it won't, they also offer 24/7 customer support. So to find out how you can get 3 months for free, head on over to expressvpn.com/gman and get started.